Yes, everyone, you know what time it is. It's your boy Jack and Dave here, and we're going to be doing a Twitter Reacts for you. It seems like people enjoy these, but Dave hasn't been able to do it with me yet, and had the pleasure to do it with Jacob and Nick of the past. If you missed those, feel free to do so because I think they're still relevant. We were just reacting to a bit of some transfer news, and the other one, I think we were looking at Ange Postecoglou, and in this one, Davo, we're going to be looking at the fixture release, and I guess you did a stream on it earlier, and I haven't exactly given my thoughts on it, and maybe I'd just go to you quickly and you can sort of summarize your sort of kind of thoughts that maybe you had and your sort of initial reactions that you had during the stream earlier, and then I'll give mine, and then we'll go into some of what the community has to say in the likes of Twitter. But what did you have to say about the fixture schedule?
Rigged, set up, sabotage, whatever word you want to use. It's every single one of them combined. Um, who else starts off with the away fixtures and ends with a lot of away fixtures, but also, look at our games there, the run of games with Newcastle, Man City, Arsenal, Liverpool, West Ham thrown in before them, Newcastle in there as well. It absolutely stinks, rigged. I believe the person who codes them computers is probably an Arsenal fan. And also the fact that Dave Dean is in the FA, no doubt. We're feeling the repercussions of that. So that's my feelings on it. But I do like these Twitter reacts because, it's where people really come into their own, Jack. I find a lot of it funny, so I can't wait for it.
I personally am not as tinfoil hat about it as you are. I wouldn't doubt that the computer generated or the supercomputer could have some gooner bias behind it, but even if it does, I feel like it's not as bad as maybe last year's was. If I recall, I remember last year's actually being quite tough, whereas this, I understand that you're right. We're not playing very often in the beginning, especially in the kind of first kind of few games of the season, right? We're only playing, what is it, one home game. I mean, that is kind of a bit sort of sad for the likes of Ange. He only gets to play his one home game, and I believe it's against Man United, which is also, right, a bit cruel, you could say. But some of those away fixtures, like, they are some of the games you would like to start off with. Like, those are the teams that you would pick, that you would like to sort of come up against. Yes, maybe you would like to come up against them at home, but away from home, I'd be fine coming up against the likes of I believe it is a Brentford and the likes of a Burnley early, and of some of the other teams like a Forest and whatnot. I'd be happy to come up against them nice and early. So I don't know, maybe I'm being a bit sort of optimistic here, but I feel like the initial schedule that we were handed, at least the first 5 or 6 games, it could be worse. It could be better. It certainly could be better, but I feel like it could be worse. There has been this sort of question brought up, though, as like, our other team is being given as many away games as us in that first initial sort of spell. I feel like we're probably one of the teams that has been given some of the most away games in that initial spell, but you can also counteract it by saying at least it's not, away games, with the likes of Chelsea or the likes of Liverpool, etc., all sort of kind of tossed in together. It's some of the easier sort of away fixtures, but maybe again, being a bit too optimistic here. And also at the end of the day, I think it feels like the games that you do end up winning are sometimes the games that maybe you least expect to win. And then some of the games that you end up losing are some of the games that you least expect to lose. It's just sort of how it is. And also we saw, what was it, Ten Hag in the first sort of stage of the season lose, what was it, that ridiculous scoreline to Brentford. He got completely humiliated in his first game of the season. And then everybody was thinking that Ten Hag was going to really struggle, right, for the rest of the year and everything. And then all of a sudden he was beating Arsenal in the beginning of the season. It's just sort of like there can be some fixtures and some games where you might feel like you can sort of predict what's going to happen, but I don't know. I think the Premier League proved last season that actually you can see a team struggling in the initial parts and then all of a sudden looking like one of the best teams towards the end of the season. So I'm not saying Spurs are going to be that case, but don't get sort of alarmed or anything if you feel like Spurs don't show up in a certain game or something like that, just because I feel like Ten Hag's Man United are a recent example. They looked absolutely hard in their first kind of few games of the season. Then they turned out to be the third place team at the end of the season. And also last season as well, there was much more sort of kind of giant killing and much more sort of underdog kind of, defeating, kind of the favorites sort of scenarios. Felt like there were much more upsets, should I say, last season as well.
Yeah, I hear you on that, Jack. I hear you. I just know that everyone in England hates Tottenham Hotspur. They're all against us. I like it that way too. Also, one last thing, I'm absolutely sick of them lot over the road, the filth, always getting the home North London derby, always in and around October as well. Seems to be a very familiar pattern that's emerging here, and I do not like it, Jacko.
No, definitely not. I think Sam Cornish here, Dave, who's, I believe, a fellow producer of this Spurs media, is saying, nice, we're going to be winning the title at home to Burnley. It's good information to know that the title will be won at Burnley here, everybody. Sam, hopefully you're keeping well, my friend. I like that one. That's the mentality that I am. He's a fellow happy clapper, you can tell. Jay saying, not feeling very Sue today. I feel like that's sort of where you're sort of at, Dave. It's not really lifted you with any sort of confidence. You probably wanted all these games to probably be at home. You wanted 3 games, 4 games at home off the bounce. Maybe a Man United mixed in there just to make things interesting. But is that probably your biggest complaint? Is the fact that there's that really difficult run of fixtures, of course, in April, but also as well is just the fact that maybe all these games in the beginning, we won't be able to see our boys wearing the beautiful the white jersey.
Look, 2 out of the opening 6 games, Jack, are home. The rest are all away. So 4 out of your opening 6 games are away from home. We've got a new manager, and he gets to play in front of the home crowd twice in 6 games. What sort of rapport is he supposed to build with the fans, in that time? And for me, I think it's designed on purpose to put him and Tottenham Hotspur under pressure straight away. But also the remaining fixtures, the running that we have in April, I believe, are put together at the business end of the season to stop us from getting Champions League football. But hey ho.
Chris here is saying, what? We have to play all these games twice? Yeah, I'm feeling like it's going to could be another difficult season. I'm ready for a rebuild. Being a Spurs fan, we know we often have to go through rebuilds that never actually get completed. So I'm quite used to this type of pain. And I'm sort of probably the opposite of most Spurs fans or even just most football fans, where I'm kind of like Chris here, where it's sort of like detoxing now over the summer, getting in nice shape over the summer. And then over the winter, to kind of just sort of get ready for all the pain and get ready for all the coping mechanisms. So I'm with you there, Chris. I think, now's the time sort of, detox and then get ready for could be a difficult season ahead. Jay saying, Paul O'Keefe, are there any other Premier League sides with only 1 home game and then 3 away games on their first 4? Dave, would you have an answer to that by chance?
I
Considering,
mean,
you believe the supercomputer is against us.
no, I don't think there is, Jack. To be honest, it's despicable. You wouldn't even treat Luton like that. You know what I mean?
Alfie says 4 away games and 3 out of the top 6 in the first 2 months, and you've got some work to do. My answer to this, Alfie, would be this is the benefit then, I guess, of not having a Conference League or a Europa League or even Champions League at the end of the day, because Ange Postecoglou being a new manager to the Premier League, he gets a lot of time now in between games and also gets to take advantage of any of these sort of teams that we'll be coming up against that do have European football and will sort of suffer from the fixture congestion. I think the Brightons, as well as the Aston Villa too, even as well maybe even Newcastle, you never know. They could suffer from the fixture congestion, considering just because they're not used to it, but also it does have just its toll. Like you'll have that sort of physical advantage over them from time to time, and they play a very high octane type of style of football, and that can't always be replicated each and every game when you're playing over 60 games or whatever it can be in a season. So Ange Postecoglou, I believe the most games he can play like this year is like 51 or 53 or whatever it may be if we were to go all the way in all the cups, etc. So it does feel like actually Ange could benefit from the fact that he gets to prepare usually for almost close to a week for each and every game that comes up. Even if it is a Man United and Arsenal, he might actually have that extra time to prepare. And we've seen, at least in the past under Antonio Conte, Spurs seem to play better in that regard.
For sure. For sure.
Barnaby says here, Newcastle City, Arsenal, and Liverpool in a row. You just know we're going to start that run in top 4 and finish it in 8th.
Yeah.
Is that what you actually, is that seems like a likely scenario for you there, Dave, that Newcastle, City, Arsenal, Liverpool run of fixtures, we could be either, you know, like some people seem to say, like we'll already be in relegation and then that will confirm our relegation. I guess that's the most pessimistic way to look at it. But then some other people who are very sort of maybe, being even delusionally positive like myself might think that, who knows, we might take advantage of that run of games where we actually come up against some pretty easy teams only to then actually have the real games right in this sort of fixture. What do you think?
Thing is, if we end up suffering a bit like Leicester did last season and get it together too late, then the repercussion of having them fixtures when they are is it will relegate you. Also, is it any surprise towards the back end of the Premier League when a lot of them teams will already be out of European competition? So they'll be fully focused on us at that period of time. So I agree with Barnaby. I think he's absolutely nailed it. From October through to April, I expect us to be inside the top four. And then after that, when the big games come around, and the way the Premier League's designed it, we'll be back and we'll be back down to eighth again.
CC1882 says down here, I genuinely don't know if these all look like difficult fixtures because of the poor season we've had or because this really is the worst cluster of a lineup we've ever had seen Spurs get. I can't see any games where we can have a good run of wins. I would say before that fixture congestion of Newcastle, City, Arsenal, and Liverpool, if I'm not mistaken, I believe there are some actual games kind of in and before that are kind of relatively easy, you could say, or should be at least easy. And also knowing that Ange Postecoglou by then will have, of course, a lot more familiarity with the Premier League, have a lot more familiarity with the squad. Hopefully we see more of a tune and more of a rhythm. And I could see us, maybe I'm wrong here, but I could see us having maybe a run of some wins or some good results before we reach, I think, those climax of the Newcastle, City, Arsenal, and Liverpool. But in the beginning, I'm a little worried about the beginning. I'll be honest. C and Dave, I am a little worried about the beginning. As much as I'm not as sort of worried as others about how it might go. It's just the fact that when you have so many games away from home, and let's say it doesn't go well in the beginning, you want to be able to go back to your home territory, go back to sort of your home crowd to get some belief, as well as get your big welcome back into Ange Postecoglou. And the fact that his first home games also against a Man United that are going to probably be really looking forward to rebuilding off of what they did last season. It is a tough run of fixtures, I think, at the beginning for Ange. It's not the toughest, but I do see how maybe in the beginning, I don't see us going on maybe a big run of wins or anything like that. But maybe towards the middle of the season, I could see us going on a run.
I would go with the latter. I think it's the biggest clusterfuck of fixtures they've ever given us at Tottenham.
Spurs ItkHub says Newcastle, Man City, Arsenal, and Liverpool back end of the season in a row. What a joke. I think that's what Dave's kind of thinking there. I think the supercomputer must have, done something quite evil there.
Glitched. Arsenal fan must have hacked into it.
At the last minute, Paul O'Keefe says, I look at these and manage to convince myself that they're harder than anyone else's, which of course is nonsense, but still, even Paul Dave is kind of on your sort of end of it. Like he's sort of a guy that would just sort of be like, listen, it's random. And also maybe what I said, it doesn't really matter. You sort of see how it does. 38 games is what everybody plays. That should be enough to decide who really is the true winner of it all. But do you feel like Paul is, kind of leaning towards your side more than he's leaning towards mine?
I think so. Look, Jack, when you look at it, right, we got to be honest. You got to play every team twice anyway, right? Granted, but it's the runs in between hand. The Premier League know our away form is shit. So what did they do? Kick Tottenham off away from home 4 times out of the first 6, and then put us with some of the top 6 teams back to back to back to back to back. It's absolutely relentless, and it's okay. I take that you've played one else twice, but it's the runs that they've created for us, which I think is absolute bollocks.
And then Cody Max says, looking at this fixture list is pretty hard when we're coming off an 8th place finish. I think that's where everybody is that dictates sort of people's mood, Cody, right? Where somebody like me coming off an 8th place finish, you just want to feel like you'll be so much better next season. And so you're looking at it with a bit of optimism, like, oh, like it might not be as bad. There's some, games here and there where maybe we'll go on a run. Then others are sort of like coming off an 8th place finish. Feels like we'll lose a lot of these games. And it's sort of deflating to people to then already so quickly be reminded of the season that's about to come up after just finishing off, of what was a pretty terrible end to the season. So I could see why some Spurs fans sort of feel that way, where it is sort of like after this sort of terrible finish, like they feel like even looking at a fixture list is not going to fill them with any hope. Any hope, unless I guess it was just playing against Burnley 38 times. I guess that would have been the only way people would have been happy. But what do you think, Dave? Like, do you feel like that's part of it too? Is just off an eighth place finish, people are just dejected, they're deflated.
Yeah, of course, they need Ange Postecoglou. They need the team to show us something to get behind. And once you really see how Tottenham, I think it's the unknown of what Tottenham are going to look like next season under Ange Postecoglou. We all have an image of our head what it's going to look like, but that's dictated by transfers, players out, etc., etc. So until we get a clearer picture of that, and we actually see under the first couple of games what they're like under Ange Postecoglou, which is why some of them would have been nice to actually have some home games. I think then you'll get a fair reflection and you sort of look at fixtures and know what ones you should be picking up points. But we have a real opportunity from October through to April to get a hell of a lot of points on the board. A lot of other teams up in that top eight, they'll all be playing European football and their fixtures will be congested in and around that period. So that's where we need to pick up most of our points.
I love it. Everybody, think we're going to leave it there when it comes to Twitter Reacts. Dave did a very good job covering his sort of reactions with, I believe, Dermatron, Philip, and the likes of Paul as well when it came to the upcoming season. So if you do want to get maybe some more in-depth sort of reactions and as well as some in-depth thoughts, feel free to check that out. But yeah, this is sort of what the likes of Twitter have had to say. It's what maybe my sort of thoughts are on it. Not as maybe tinfoil hat as Dave is, but I'm also not exactly super excited about the season. But I do feel like the way it goes, especially with the way the Premier League's recently been, it feels like some games you win that you just completely don't expect to, and then some games you end up losing that you just totally expected to win. And it's just how it is maybe these days, with the fact that every Premier League team is sort of capable of beating each other more so than ever before. I don't think it's really much of a cliche. So everybody leave your comments down below what your thoughts on the fixture schedule is and hit that like button. Yeah, Dave.
Just before we leave, right? I know a lot of people say to me about, some of my takes can be very tinfoil hatty, right? And I get it, right? But hear me out on this, right? When I've had talks about VAR before being corrupt. I've had talks about the fixture list before being corrupt and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden we go into a season, we're not allowed to postpone a game in order to play a European game that we couldn't fulfill. Premier League didn't allow us to it, but then the next season and we end up going out of the Europa Conference League. But next season they allowed Arsenal to move a Europa League game on a Premier League game to play a Europa League game to help them out. And then all people said, you know what, the Premier League are against us. And then they forget about it. Then the fixture list comes out. I tell them the supercomputer's rigged. Then they all go, Dave, you're a tinfoil hat wearer. Well, they won't be saying that when April comes around. They'll all be agreeing with me for sure on that. Look, just accept. The Premier League are out to get us. Everyone in English football does not want us playing in the top table. They don't want us in European football. Ange, Kane, and the rest of the Tottenham team, pull yourselves together. Stand up. Do my fighting against them for me. Come on, you Spurs.